a few years back, I think about 2 years ago, a friend from the past, an old friend, said to me, she said, Barinada, you're so lucky. God don't pick your call. She said, you seem to have everything going for you. You don't have money problem. I smiled in my mind and I said, is there anybody that really does not have money problem? What she did not know is that I was not lucky. At least not in the sense that people say, oh, you're lucky. I would rather say that I prepared myself to get lucky. I prepared myself for luck. You see, I grew up in an all-girls family. And for the first 7 years of my life, it was just me, my siblings, and my sisters, and my mom. And that's because at the time, my father was working in Lagos. He was doing 2 jobs. He was schooling, and he was also, trying very hard to bring us to Lagos. Now, when we got to Lagos finally, I lived in the worst of neighborhood. Like, I lived in a very terrible place. I lived in a place where getting pregnant when you're 15 was not a big deal. Education was nothing to them. But it was where my parents could afford at the time. And so, coupled with the fact that we lived in a very terrible neighborhood, there was this talk about, remember I said that we're all girls, so there was this talk about, oh, anybody that has just female children really do not have a child yet. Because female children will get married, they'll go to their husband's house, and they'll forget the parents. And so there was this side talk that some people were making to my father then. They were saying, are you sure you're not going to adopt a boy like this? And you're even trying to push them to school and all of that. So I would not say, despite coming from a very humble background, I would say that I came from a privileged home. Privileged in the sense that my father understood the importance of education. And he ensured that all his female children actually went to school. And that's why I'm a lawyer today. And by the way, I was told after I got called to the bar that I'm the first female lawyer in my village. Somebody say hallelujah. Okay, so before I got called, before the whole being a lawyer thing, I did not, unlike other people, I didn't exactly start out to say I wanted to be a lawyer. It happened that I was much more interested in things like journalism, mass communication, even being an actress, So, the year before JAMB, I did JAMB twice, by the way. The year before my first JAMB, I had a dream. And in that dream, I was graduating. I was either matriculating or graduating as a lawyer. I'm not sure which one it was. But my parents were there. So when I took my first JAMB and I put in English language and mass communication, and I had 80 over 100, so I was a hot in school, by the way. I had 80 over 100, and yet I was not given the admission. I started to wonder what was wrong for English, and I knew people who got like 54, and they got in for their choice course, even courses that were better than, I'm sorry if there's any English graduate here, but like more competitive courses than English. So, I wasn't bothered that much. So the next year I took JAMB again. I put Unilag, and then I got the admission to study law, and that's how I started. I went through the 5 years at the university, finished up with good grades, went to the law school, and then I got called to the bar, and another phase of my life started. The phase where I started to wonder, okay, so what will I now do with myself? And like every fresh new week, right, every fresh graduate from the law school, I always dreamt of, okay, as soon as I finish, I'll get involved or I'll be absorbed by one of the big law firms. I mean, that was like the dream of every, new week out there for them to get into one of the big law firms. But, it didn't quite play out that way. No law firm, no big law firm absorbed me. A couple of months later, I started working at a shipping agency. A couple of months later, I started working at a shipping agency. I was their company secretary, legal advisor for a couple of months. So I was there, but I was not really there because I felt like something was off. I felt like I should be doing something else. I wasn't doing core legal work for them, right? So I felt like there's something else I could be doing. So I became really uncomfortable in that space. And I started to talk about, leaving. So I had this conversation. One day, my boyfriend then, who happened to be my husband now, he called me and he said, babe, have you considered using social media? Like, I think you can actually be sharing your thoughts, you know, basically teach about law and business to people out there. They'll reach out to you. So I gave it a long thought, and then I said, okay, this could be something. A few days later, I resigned from the shipping agency. So I resigned and I went back home, and I gave myself a few more weeks to study the platforms, to really study about, you know, to really figure out what aspect of law I wanted to focus on, and to really figure out the kind of people I wanted to be serving or I wanted to attract to myself. And so I decided that, okay, you know what, I'm going to be a lawyer for startups. And for me to have arrived at that decision, I had to think about the problem, that the challenges, the problem that these people who I want to serve actually have. So I started to think about their peculiarities, you know, and it got to a point, I started to think about their peculiarities, and it was as if everything became clear. So I started to see what was not happening in the big law firms. I started to see how big law firms are unable to really serve these startups. Why? Because of their peculiar nature, because of the things that they focus on. So what were the peculiarities that I found out about startup founders? I realized that they're a very vulnerable set of people, right? I also realized that these startup founders have a special legal needs. Like their kind of legal needs is different from the regular small business owner. And then they required a certain level of attention, which I knew for a fact that traditional law firms were not wired to treat them. I mean, who walks into a big law firm, say B&I, or one of the big law firms, Templars, and says, please, I have the startups, I mean, no one does that. I haven't seen anyone who does that, right? So it created a problem, and that was the problem of access to legal services. But before I get to the problem of access to legal services, let me just explain to you why I chose to focus on startup founders and not just the regular small business owners. You see, the startup space is a very interesting one, and startup founders are very unique people. Remember I said that they have their own peculiarities, they are unique in a way. There is a certain level of thought pattern that goes through their head. As a matter of fact, the things that they think about are not what a regular small business owner would be bothered about. So while a startup founder is thinking about product development, he's thinking about technology, he's thinking about innovation, he's thinking about how to scale the business, he's thinking about making profits. A startup founder is thinking about equity funding, he's thinking about equity vesting, he's thinking about profitability, and eventually how to exit. These are things that a regular small business owner, you know, like maybe Iyabisi who sells akara by the roadside, will not be thinking about. But picture this, a group of young guys come together and say, you know what, we want people to be able to have akara and pap whenever they want it without going to queue by the road. So they build an app, and where you can maybe place an order for akara and it will be delivered to you. You see that they are actually doing the same business, but one set of people have used technology to kind of, you know, disrupt the market. So these guys are always thinking about how to disrupt the market, how to, you know, use technology, what's the next big thing that they can do. So there are very specific legal needs. And the truth is, not all lawyers or not every law firm is wired to cater for their legal needs. So early on, I figured out that these were the problems that this set of guys have, and it would be good for us to have, you know, somebody watch out or look out for them. And so the big problem, which is lack of access to legal service, is tied to all of their peculiarities. Because if you don't understand my peculiarities and you don't understand the challenge of, getting a traditional law firm or conventional law firm is such an expensive, you know, process. Before you get a lawyer on board or before you get a retainer, it's so expensive. And then you have the case of, sometimes, especially startups at the early stage, right? You want to be able to have access to your lawyer like maybe 247, in quotes, actually not 247, but you want to actually be able to have constant access to them. But because of how traditional law firms are wired, they are unable to have that connection, that opportunity, that relationship with their support, their legal support team. And then there is the issue of lack of specialization, even on the part of the legal experts. You know, when I was in school and immediately after my call to bar, like I said, I dreamed I wanted to be absorbed by one of the big law firms. And then, like every other person, we're always looking and hoping to catch a big fish, catch a multinational, like just be everywhere. Everyone wanted to do land law. Everyone wanted to go into oil and gas. In fact, a lot of us just wanted to do all of those big things together because in our mind, that's how we're going to have more money. So there was really no dedicated law firm that says, okay, we are a startup focused law firm. We already understand your peculiarities, we know everything you're going through, and we have tailor-made solutions to serve you. There was really nothing like that. So it was what I thought in my head, and I said, okay, you know what, Bayanada, you're going to do this. And I knew that I did not stand a chance with, you know, conventional law firms. I mean, at the time I took the decision, the year I left my job was 2017, it was in April. At that time, I was barely 3 years at the bar. And ordinarily, the norm is you would have worked with a law firm, say about 10, 15 years, before you can have the liver, the boldness to say, I want to start up my own law firm. I remember when I was sourcing for an office space, you know, someone, he's actually a very senior lawyer, about 20 years at the bar also. He said, what is giving you this audacity? What makes you think that you can do this? I was in a paid employment for over 10 years and I did not think of starting out my own law firm. Why do you think anybody would take you serious when you're just barely 3 years at the bar? But I'm standing here today and I'm telling you that Bayanada Legal is probably the best thing that has happened to startup founders in Africa. Because it met a need. There was a need. There's probably still a need because the thing is, I would love to have as many founders on my team as possible, but even I can't cater for the needs of everybody. So we need more lawyers to begin to think about specialized skills, to begin to think about, okay, instead of being everywhere and not being known for something, how about I pick an area and just focus? One time I followed my father to an eye clinic. Before then, I was always thinking that why do people who have specialized clinics, when there are so many people, that have been leaving so much money on the table? But I followed him to this eye clinic, and it was as if the whole of Lagos had eye problem. You would be surprised the amount of, you know, attention, clients, people who actually need your service when you are specialized. Then, of course, leveraging technology and with a touch of humanity. That is very important. So, while I understand where technology is taking the world to, technology is redefining everything, and technology is including legal practice, right? There are lots of legal tech companies where you don't even have to do anything. Some people tell you don't need a lawyer anymore. You know, tech does everything for you. You want a contract, you can prepare it on the go. That is fantastic, but I like the idea of having a blend of technology with humanity, because the truth of the matter is that at the end of the day, technology cannot do everything for you. So while we must leverage technology and technological tools, we have to imbibe in the humanity. We have to put a human face to what we're doing, right? So, I mean, a founder will come to me and say, I have this particular issue, and it has nothing to do with documentation, but more to do with just listening to him talk. Technology can't listen to you, but humans can. So this is what we're doing, and this is how we're making a difference in the legal space. So if you're a startup founder here, I want you to know that you're doing fantastically well, and please tell yourself, I am doing well. I am doing well. And with the right legal knowledge, I can do better. Thank you for having me.